So today I've got a fun project. Instead of building a tool or a table, I'm going to build a box for this fog light to put on my truck. So I've got some 4-inch squares, 1/8 inch thick or 11 gauge. I'm really going to build a box out of this and recess the light inside of it to put behind the bumper of my truck, and then cut a hole, in the bumper. Instead of doing a flush mount, because the way my bumper is, if I did a flush mount, this light would be angled downwards, and I need it to be angled up some, especially since I've got a lift on my truck. So I think the best way to do that, that's going to look the best, is going to be to recess this light sort of behind the bumper, and then it'll be up at probably a 10 or 15 degree angle. So like I said, I'll either build a box out of this 11 gauge, or I've got this 5x3 rectangular tube. I can set this inside of here. Of course, it'll be cut off. Set it inside, and then I'll use the square tube to make sure it's level, and that'll give me the angle I need on my bumper. Not sure which one's going to look the best, but figure it out shortly. This is about where I want it. I might put it to where it's even with the headlight and turn signal. Yeah, plus there's brackets behind here. And this will be the best place to put it. And looking at it, so this is a blackout light, which of course it's painted over, which it shouldn't be, but I don't need the blackout light on this truck anymore. And even this one is angled, I see now. Yeah, I think that'll look good. Here I'm just filling a hole in the bumper. I could have used a copper backing to plug the hole and make it easier to tack it closed, but I didn't know where mine was, and this hole was small enough that I could just tack it real easily. I start measuring to cut the hole, but I realized that it would be easier to just use the rectangular tube and trace it. I quickly realized that I needed to put my respirator on. Having more than one angle grinder saves a lot of time. It helps to have one for every disc that you normally use. For me, that's a cutting wheel and a flap disc. Here I'm measuring the depth of the fog light to figure out how much of the rectangular tube I want to cut. I figured a 2-inch depth measured from the bottom of the housing would be good. The top of the tube would need to be longer due to the angle of the bumper. Instead of trying to measure the angle of the bumper and transfer it to the tube, I decided to align the 2-inch line on the tubing with the bottom of the cutout on the bumper. Then I leveled out the tubing and marked my cut line using the bumper for reference. The mistake I made was not accounting for my driveway not being level. You will see this later in the video how I fix it to make sure that the fog light is aimed level with the ground. What I could have done is place my level on the ground, then make sure the bubble is in the same position once I placed it on the housing. Here I'm just sanding down the weld seam and preparing the inside of the tubing to weld in the light bracket. I tried a couple of ideas on how to make the light bracket before settling on just cutting down some 11 gauge to fit inside the tubing. Then I would cut 2 pieces off to make a bracket for one light. I repeated this process for the passenger side light. every once in a while I'll forget that my welding hood is in grind mode. And then whenever I start to weld, I'll end up flashing myself. After getting the profile of the opening close with the angle grinder and die grinder, it was time to fine-tune it with my American Pattern machinist files. They have a coarse cut. I used a flat file for the flat sides, a 3 square file to start the corners, and a round file to finish off the corners. I think I may have used a square file as well. My round file is tapered, and I mainly use the end of it since the fog light housing has a relatively small opening. I used a welding magnet to hold a piece of 11 gauge to space the light inside the housing. That way it would be easy to ensure that both lights would be recessed the same distance. I have a Power Probe 4 master combo kit, and I used it to supply 12 volts to the light to get it aimed properly before fully welding the brackets in. You just connect the tester to a battery, then you hit a switch to supply either a ground or a positive to the test leads. I let my garage door down and used it to aim the fog light relative to my headlights. Unfortunately, this didn't show up well on camera due to overexposure. I have a lot of improvement to make on my vertical welds, so I decided to use a series of tacks to get the bracket in. I used a carbide burr to blend the weld for a nice radius. I learned that the trick was starting off in the corner and keeping smooth movements. Don't let the burr sit in one area because then it will create a dip in the metal that you have to blend out. I completed the passenger side the next day, and for the most part, the procedure was the same. The biggest difference is that I had to fight the wind while welding. I'll throw a quick clip in of my solution for that. I also had to make sure the passenger fog light was aimed relative to the headlight and the driver's side fog light. I used the lines of my garage to make sure that they were level with each other. This is with just my fog lights on. They throw the light pretty far because I have a spotlight cover on them. You can order these with several different covers. This is my headlights and fog lights. Thank you for watching. If you have any feedback, please feel free to leave a comment. Alright, thanks.